It was like the what's it called, the that film, the Hunsucker proxy with the long meeting table, and then the chairman goes, "I'm going to solve all our problems," or whatever the line
Yeah.
is, and then he takes up a run and he just throws himself out of the window. It goes crashing. It was like I just kept on remembering that scene from the Hunsucker proxy. And I was
There'd
like,
be a lot of people hoping that was the case. But I
that
mean,
was the case. Yeah.
but
Hello and welcome. My name is Richard Simon. I am Cloud Therapist. This is the December 2025 episode of Cloud State of Play. Sad to see the year ending. Another year gone by, and so quickly as well. It was only the other day I was actually preparing for SuCon 2025, but there you go. And then, yeah, just after that, Paul and I were theatre chairs, not literally as chairs, but actually looking after some theatres at the Cloud Expo Europe event in London as well. Yeah, so and they let me stay on that really luxury yacht as well one night, which was very kind of them, I have to say. Anyway,
I didn't get that pleasure.
I know you didn't get that. You were only doing. I think your thing was because you were only doing one night, one day,
Yeah,
and then
that's
you
it.
didn't stay over. But I said
Yeah.
to them, "Oh no, I'm staying over," and they said, "Okay, we can find you something." And I said, "Is that yacht over there? Okay." And I went like, "Yes, that'll do fine." Anyway, so the remarkable Paul Bevan is back with me for this particular episode, this final episode of the year. Paul is retired, not retired, as his new title. That's his kind of thing now. That's his label. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. So welcome back, Paul, again. Good to see you. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. I think the not retired bit is probably taking over the retired bit at the moment. It's been an interesting
You
December.
said there was an imbalance, I think, in that ratio somewhere. So
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. I didn't even manage to stop the LinkedIn requests to pick
Oh,
up and go for new jobs. You know, it's
my
like, oh, for
word.
goodness sake, stop it.
That
Anyway,
was one of your ultimate aims, though,
it
wasn't it?
was one of my ultimate aims. I failed completely on that one.
Miserably. Okay.
Anyway,
Well, you still have time to work on that. But are you looking forward to Christmas and all that?
yeah, absolutely. New grandson, first grandson.
Fantastic.
And yeah, so it should be fun.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, and we will be back, of course, in January for our Class to Play 2026 projections episode. So look forward to that. Look out for that as well. It's probably out by now, depending on when you're watching this one. But yeah, that will be the next thing that we're going to be doing. Now, our topics for this month are: one, just what is IBM's strategy anyway? So we're going to be looking at some of the recent and kind of maybe persistent or kind of regular activities that IBM sort of gets up to in terms of a strategy. I'm going to dissect into some of that and see kind of what Paul and I can find out. That'll be interesting. Number two, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So we're going to be looking at two different Gen AI reports. You may have heard of them, the MIT report and the Wharton report, because they both seem to be, at least on this sort of LinkedIn influencer level, reporting different results on the same or more or less the same topic. So that'll be interesting. We're going to have a look at that later on. The third topic is IT is a service to the business. Believe it or not, if you didn't know that, and if you're in IT, that's apparently what it is, and that's exactly what it should be. So IT is a service to the business is the third topic that we're going to look at. Somebody put out a post, I think, on LinkedIn, so we're going to kind of go through that. And yeah, I think it was quite interesting to maybe just pick up on some of the points around that. That was quite an interesting topic, but we thought that we'll look at. Maybe quite quite kind of interesting. We'll maybe end with that particular topic for the year as well. So that's what we're going to look into for this month. But before we do that, here is a quick channel message for you. Did you know that 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet to this channel? Come on, guys, we can do better, surely. So please hit subscribe and the notification bell. It costs nothing, but it really helps me to keep making more videos for you. All right, back to the therapy session. Okay, so our first topic is going to be just what is IBM's strategy anyway? Now, recently, towards the end of 2025, IBM announced their acquisition, or their intent to acquire, Confluent. Confluent is in that sort of Apache Kafka space. I think the company was actually founded by the guys who sort of created Apache Kafka. Yeah, and interesting one. I think it's kind of segues into some of the other stuff that you and I, Paul, have been kind of talking about. As you know, dear viewers, dear audience, Paul and I go back and forth on WhatsApp and emails quite a lot in the background. But yeah, it was kind of just another piece of news or piece of the jigsaw with IBM. There wasn't actually somebody put out an interesting kind of report on the whole thing. So I'll maybe circle back on that. But kind of, what's your first take on Confluent, the acquisition of Confluent, and then kind of maybe a little bit deeper in terms of IBM's overall strategy?
My first take was, why so late before you did it?
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting.
In the sense that IBM, of all people, ought to know the importance of data and data streaming. And let's face it, they've invented enough of the sort of message queuing and sort of streaming stuff that's out in the market.
With MQ series, I think.
MQ series.
I remember installing that a couple of times when I was at IBM.
So I mean, they've got quite a track record.
Hairy stuff.
They've got a very hoary old database, DB2. But I mean, from an enterprise level, they should have been seeing some time ago that, the need to get streaming analytics and therefore data that's up to date and clean and all those sort of things into a platform that you could deliver to. And a lot of the LinkedIn article was pointing towards agentic AI, and the ability to deliver, up to date, clean data to agents. That's what they were talking about. And so the sense was, yeah, I get it. And it's got, which sort of IBM have sort of played a little bit, right from their sort of Red Hat days, and there is, we've got all this open source stuff we're doing. So they're sort of trying to play we're not closing things off, we're open source. But it just felt that they were sort of somewhat late to the party. And you've got proprietary products, albeit proprietary products, that are already good in that space. I mean, Oracle 12 AI, and also if you look at InterSystems, Iris, there are solutions out there that have already tackled the issue of, how do I not replicate data over and over again into another data warehouse, into another data lake, and how do I get that data, relevant, clean data, into a stream so that it can be used in real-time analytics? And they've, both InterSystems and Oracle have been looking at that long and hard for a while now. So that's why I felt IBM were a little bit behind the sort of
curve,
and having to buy rather than having developed it themselves, which was an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, I think their CEO was on a couple of recent interviews. I can't remember what the platform. So we'll drop all the stuff in the. I'll drop all the links in the description of the video. But I didn't really get. I didn't really get a full sort of, oh yeah, that makes sense sort of impression from what he was saying. There was a lot of that kind of, all agentic and blah blah. Everything's just with word agent. Every other word is agentic and things like that. But I didn't really get that sort of impression. I don't know if you got a chance to see any of them or read on any of what he was saying.
One of the challenges is for IBM, I think, listening to what they're saying and also reading some of the bits around it, is they're trying to do too much. I know they're a $62 billion corporation. They're not exactly small beer, and they've got some tremendous technical skills.
Yes.
But I think their ability to pull together everything they're trying to do, they're basically almost like trying to be a one-stop shop for their existing customers.
Yeah. And
that's a problem.
Yeah. And the recent trumping by Oracle in terms of the public cloud side, the OCI versus IBM cloud, is and Oracle kind of being featured more in those new deals, with the OpenAI, NVIDIA, and SoftBank and so on. It's kind of really left the IBM cloud even further behind, I think, in terms of kind of stature and size, scalability, and scaling and things like that.
I think IBM, I don't know whether it was consciously or it was probably consciously actually stepped back from public cloud a good 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I mean, I was in an IBM, one of the IBM's UK headquarters on the South Bank 2 years ago, beginning of 2023, and one of the other, it was a group of analysts from different analyst companies. One of them posed the question about, what was happening with IBM's infrastructure as a service. Are you still doing it?
Yeah.
And there was a sort of very half-hearted, yes, let's move on type, and it was quite telling. The other things are quite telling from that as well at the same time. But I think that they consciously decided that they were not going to try and compete. I mean, they've wasted money on software, to be honest. I mean, why the hell did they do software if they weren't going to use it? And I think that's a part of IBM's problem, is that they suddenly realized they've bitten off more than they can chew in a number of areas. And at the moment, they've got too many things going on, even for a $62 billion corporation.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think the post that I saw quite late is actually, kind of alluding to that as well. I still find, I agree in terms of I think the cloud, the IBM cloud side of it. I think they've just now turned that into like a Watson X sort of, platform. And they're just going to do it for their customers. They're not necessarily going to go out and strike a deal with OpenAI, and I think they have done with Anthropic or something, I believe, recently. I might be wrong, but I think it was, I saw something from.
But they're certainly not going to provide. They're not going to provide chips and data centers.
No. Yeah, they're not even having a go at kind of, okay, we'll compete with Oracle on the GPU as a service type thing, which you and I discussed in the October episode. So if you guys want more on the kind of what Oracle's up to, check out the October episode, Cloud State of Play. So, but no, I don't see that. Now, so that was kind of my impression from the Arvind Krishna interviews, who's the CEO of IBM, and he's an ex-Red Hatter, and obviously recently, the HashiCorp acquisition closed, and we talked about that with Sarah Poland in the Christmas special. So check out the Christmas special as well. Which is with the review with Sarah Poland in regards to the closing of the acquisition of HashiCorp. Again, I think that's kind of more Red Hat, influencing and saying, "Oh, I want those toys over there, Dad," kind of thing. And then IBM says, "All right, son, how much do you need?" Kind of thing, because obviously IBM's got the deep pockets. But what was the other view that you had around the sort of the FinOps portfolio that they had? I think you kind of wanted to comment on that.
AI Ops portfolio.
Yeah, or AI Ops rather, yeah.
Yeah, let me come back to you. Don't let me forget what we've just been talking about, because I think there's other things to add to that. But from an AI Ops perspective, again, two years ago, had a deep dive into their AI Ops with IBM. And, they bought it Instana. They bought Turbonomic. They bought I can't think of it.
Aptio.
Aptio, thank you. Yeah. And they've got some other bits and pieces of their own that were quite good. And one of the things that was really interesting when I talked to them 2 years ago was that they were trying to meld it all together using a lot of open source technology underneath it. For example, they were using Grafana, and so they were building quite a lot of stuff to try and pull it all together.
Right.
but they were making big play of the fact that they got a lot of open source in there,
Yeah.
and this is a sort of ongoing theme that you keep hearing open source, and so at the time I looked at it and I thought, yeah, actually the tools they've bought individually, the tools are really good. If they can marry them all together, they've got one hell of a story.
Yeah.
But 2 years on, I don't think they've married them all together. I mean, I just don't think it's happened. In fact, the whole market, we've talked about the observability market and how AI ops got, overtaken by observability, and how it's got, and even Gartner is saying, it's been a disappointing what's happened in this whole marketplace for the last couple of years. So I think, there's plenty of evidence that the whole market lost its way. And I think that was the case. I mean, but there was another angle, and it sort of loops back to what we were originally saying around open source and changes at IBM. Part of the same thing I was doing roughly around the same time was looking at some of their vertical markets.
Yeah.
And I got a great presentation from IBM on their financial services end-to-end architecture. Okay, interesting, lots of stuff together. The one that jumped out at me, and it was right down the bottom of the stack, was they had, from an IT ops management point of view, they were using Dynatrace.
That's interesting.
Why are you using Dynatrace and not all these other tools, which do exactly what Dynatrace does, exactly the same thing?
Yeah.
And you realize that actually where this vertical market piece comes from is that their consulting arm. And if you now talk to people within the UK or anywhere in Europe, you're fundamentally talking to their services and consulting division.
Okay.
Product has gone right back to the States in terms of anybody you can talk to. So and I saw this at first hand in Unisys, that when the consultants came in, they were very keen to distance themselves from the underlying proprietary technology.
Right.
And this was exactly what was happening with their financial services end-to-end architecture. It looked really good, but it was all open source stuff, or it wasn't even open source. It was anybody but IBM.
Right. Yeah.
And I think at the time I wrote something about, it's IB and no M.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my original take on that. So I think that was a problem. I mean, regarding the AI ops, I genuinely did think that they got a good potential there. But I'm going to read to you the closing paragraph of my blog that I wrote as a result of seeing that.
Okay.
All right. Moving beyond its existing base, the challenge for IBM is both cultural and organizational. It has tools like Instana that should appeal to a much wider set of businesses and also developer communities. IBM Consulting is powerfully placed to win in its traditional markets. However, this potential success may not generate the sort of exposure and sales that the IBM product groups need to help them break out into the wider market. 2 years on, I rest my case, my lord.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I think that's still.
I wish all my predictions were as accurate as
good as that.
They're not by any means, but
you'd be sitting on a beach earning 40% or something. I think.
Yeah, unfortunately not. But I mean, it's yes.
But that does ring true. That does ring true. That is. I mean, and I think this is the thing. It's IBM does modernize. It sheds fat. It kind of gets lean and mean. It acquires. It brings out something, kind of does, what's the next or whatever type of thing. It does granite, models, LLM models, and so on. Recently, it's attached itself to this thing, Langflow. So I actually interviewed somebody who is representing as an IBMer. It didn't look like an IBMer. He was an IBMer. Really nice guy though. About Langflow, which is kind of the AI agent sort of framework and development environment. And I just thought, this is quite cool, but I don't know how I don't know how Langflow really fits into sort of the rest of IBM, whether it was actually invented by them or acquired by them or whatever. I don't know. But point being is that, they're across the whole spectrum, really. but I never get, what is the strategy here? Are you just buying everything that you can, anything that moves, you're going to kind of buy it? You got Confluent now, you had HashiCorp 18 months ago, Red Hat, for X amount of years prior to that. What is all where is all this going? And as you said, these kind of FinOps, AIOps, tools. Again, so the weird thing about that, because you mentioned that, so I had an up-to-date version of that briefing that you had 2 years ago, and this was quite literally like weeks ago, when I was actually in Germany, and I had the IBM guys presenting, and the bit that they left out was kube cost. And I said, "Oh, hang on, you acquired kube cost in I think it was 2024, and you and I missed it on our review of that year because it was just so under the radar. Nobody talked about it, nobody mentioned it, nobody was banging the drum, certainly not IBM. But I subsequently, learned of that fact. And then I thought, hang on, in all this Instana and Turbine, where is kube cost in this picture? And it was anywhere on the picture. I'm thinking, so what? Are they kind of just left out on their own in the cold, or do they come in at another point in the chart that's not on this chart, or it's off the screen? Or it was just very confusing. And then you obviously couple that with the more traditional, mainframe, power systems, storage, networking. As we said, IBM Cloud being kind of leapfrogged by Oracle's, cloud infrastructure, and so on. You wanted to go back to, we were talking about Red Hat and Hashi and acquisitions. What was it you wanted to go back to?
Well, no, I sort of brought it back into that sort of whole way in which IBM have re-engineered the organizational structure, and having, and if you look at their latest reports, which is the end of 2024, software, consulting, and infrastructure are the three main areas. And software has gone up 9%, consulting only 1%, infrastructure is down 3%. And clearly the solutions people, the services people are almost ignoring their own infrastructure to their detriment at times.
Yeah.
To their detriment.
And they tend to have this thing where something happens like Gen AI and LLMs and so on, and then and they've done this before umpteen number of times, and they go, "Oh, we need to do that. Okay, so we'll bring out our own models, Granite," and then they'll go, "Oh, here's these models if you want to use them," and then everybody says, "Yeah, I'm just too busy with Anthropic. So take a ticket and sit down for a minute, IBM." And it's like nobody cares, right? Yeah. And then the LinkedIn influencers come out, so the likes of Andreas Horn, who's the head of AI Ops, Armand Ruiz, who's the VP of AI platforms, and they go, "Oh yeah, our models are fantastic. I look at this thing called Docling that we've released, and it's turning documents and PDFs into usable data and knowledge bases, and it can kind of output it in whatever format." Yeah, really great demo, and it's free, but I think we're just a little bit too busy with this other stuff at IBM. So if you don't mind just waiting in the queue, because we're not really interested in what because what you're doing is just copying everybody else. Right, and I assume the likes of, ChatGPT 5 and so on, and the recent models from Google as well, Gemini models from Google, should be able to do this, in their sleep, right?
Yeah.
Breaking their sweat. So I don't know. It's just a kind of everybody's doing that, so we need to go and do that. Whether it's AI ops or FinOps, or hey, kube cost is looking at Kubernetes clusters and it can save money. Hey, let's buy them, kind of thing. No, hang on. Why are you doing that?
Yeah,
what are we going to do with them afterwards? What's your day two?
Yeah,
what's your day two strategy?
Yeah, and they've got too much on their plate. I mean, they're trying to do too many different things, and one of the LinkedIn posts that was linked to our sort of conversation here was sort of positing the fact that they were trying to set themselves up not to take the hyperscalers on direct, but to become the trust layer, the trust infrastructure layer of the business. Yeah. But again, okay, I can see them trying to do that, but that's for their own organizations. If you're an existing IBM user, you've actually got ready-made solutions there that you can go to pretty quickly without having to go to a completely new supplier. That's
Yeah,
fine. But IBM are not breaking out from their traditional base, which is,
yeah,
ultimately will kill them.
yeah, absolutely. So this last article, I mean, there's lots of stuff on here, so we're gonna drop all the stuff in the description of the video. But there was a guy who put out a post on LinkedIn called Nathaniel Niazov. So apologies if I'm butchering the name there. He's the CEO at Ascendrix. I don't know what Ascendrix does, but point being is that his article said across, they're making moves across 10 major areas this year. So IBM, he called it, I think, IBM's quiet power play. And then he asked the question, monopoly or the architecture of trust? I think it's neither of those, because even if they monopolize something, nobody cares about what they're monopolizing. They're not in the center of attention. They're not in that kind of center where OpenAI is and Microsoft is and NVIDIA is. And anyway, so he kind of said, oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff unfolding there. So things like AI integration with IBM Watson and Anthropic, fusing models of, for performance and governance and things like that. Digital finance, which is around IBM's Asset Haven. I think they kind of have these bridges around crypto and sort of regulated markets and things like that. Quantum Edge, you talked about 150 billion investment in new sort of quantum centers. Okay, so yeah, they are doing stuff with quantum, hybrid infrastructure. So again, doing various things and partnering with Oracle, which I've kind of fell off my seat when I read about that as well. And then obviously doing stuff around security. So again, quantum safe encryption and things like that.
You see, I think if a big customer says to them, have you got this? Can you do that?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, maybe we ought to either, join up with somebody, and collaborate, i.e. Oracle, or we'll go buy them. I think it seems to be a knee-jerk reaction all the time.
Yes. Yeah. And I still can't help thinking that, the Red Hat acquisition was a reverse takeover by Red Hat. I'm still skeptical on that front, and especially with the big banners now. In the big chair.
I mean, there was a guy called Zhang Li who also did a LinkedIn on the Confluent, piece, and he was talking about what IBM are trying to do is to be the glue, if you like, that holds all the sort of bits together. They're the ones the sort of the problem isn't. He said the problem isn't building a smarter AI. The problem is giving AI access to real-time data from anywhere, from everywhere, without creating chaos. Yeah, fine, but he went on to sort of suggest that that's what's going to be the dominant factor. It's the person who owns that sort of layer is going to be the one that wins. And he says, what's your take? Well, I'm blunt. My take is, if AI is the application always wins.
Yeah.
The infrastructure doesn't ever win.
Yeah.
And
who cares? Especially in the age of cloud computing.
Yeah, however clever, and this is a sort of messaging network, however clever, it is underlying plumbing, and it never wins from a market perspective. You can have a good business out of it if you do it properly. But he's trying to say IBM is going to, rule the world because it owns that piece. Well, it might own that piece with its own customer base, but that customer base is shrinking.
Yes.
So I mean, and I've got personal experience of trying to push the idea of the plumbing, taking over, and it's for another time. I've got more stories that still leave me twitching badly when I realized what we did or didn't do.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, my experience of, I spent 16 years at IBM, and although I was kind of had my own little sort of corner of the world, of the IBM world, still I would kind of, every now and then I'd come into the orbit of these kind of bigger stories and acquisitions and competitive stuff that IBM was doing or strategy stuff that they were doing. And it was just almost every 18 months, there was a renaming of everything. Everything just got renamed because marketing had nothing to do, basically. And I think the problem is that that kind of approach and strategy hasn't changed. They've shed a lot of stuff like Kyndryl and all the old GTS or Global Technology Services and what have you, but really the MO, the modus operandi hasn't really changed. They're still kind of reactive in the old way and still just acquiring because, as you said, somebody said, hey, I need a data streaming platforms. And okay, who can we buy? Those guys over there at Confluent. Okay, let's go and get them.
And if you look at their website, I mean, it's like a throwback to the 80s. It really is, just from a style perspective, but also trying to navigate around it, all the bits and pieces, trying to navigate your way around it. That's probably why QCOS got lost.
Yeah.
It is on the website somewhere, but can you
hang on, what's this in my back pocket? Arvind Krishna's back pocket. Oh, I didn't know we had them.
Yeah. I mean, God help you if you've got a business problem and you come in and think, now how am I going to navigate the IBM website to see what I need to, where I need to go next? Anyway, that's
yes.
I mean, IBM is around and will be around for a long time. It's done a lot of really good things in terms of that, but oh boy, it does seem to have lost the thread from a strategic point of view of where it's going.
Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Let's move on to the second topic. So this topic is it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Now I chose that title because I think it kind of fitted aptly into what we were looking at in these two particular reports around Gen AI and AI in general. So one report is from MIT and the other report is from Wharton. Now, you told me who Wharton was, and mind repeating it again, Paul?
So Wharton Business School is probably one of the top, if not the top, American US business school. I wasn't quite sure whether it's allied with the Ivy League universities, the Yale, Harvards of this world. I won't make that, but it's certainly East Coast based.
Right.
But it is one of the top, management schools, not just in the States, but probably in the world.
Yeah. Okay. So these two reports, I think, came out quite close to each other. I think MIT maybe was first and Wharton was second. I could be wrong. But what's happened is that one of them has been very negative around sort of Gen AI and the usage of Gen AI and the implementation of Gen AI in enterprises. So that's the MIT one. And then the other one, the Wharton one, has been relatively positive in terms of implementation and doing things like pilots and stuff like that of Gen AI projects in enterprises. Now, it could be that actually the reports are not as kind of extreme on either end of that spectrum. It's just that the people have been reporting on the reports and putting out posts on various stuff. I mean, the MIT one went viral a couple of months ago on LinkedIn. It could be those LinkedIn influencers and various other ones that have their own interest have latched onto particular numbers from the report and have really spread that like wildfire. So the MIT one, like I said, was saying that 95% of the projects that they surveyed had actually failed, or they would not return the ROI that was expected. Whereas I think Wharton put it positively at around 74, I think, or 75%. So clearly a marked difference between the two reports, Paul, and we'll break down a little bit more in terms of kind of the details of them. And somebody actually did a really good breakdown, which I think I shared with you. Yeah. So we'll go through that. But what was kind of your initial take? Let's go there first.
Oh, well, I think you said everybody latches onto the extremes of that. So my take was that both had really positive points, but they were actually looking at certainly the metrics was something slightly different. I had some sympathy that with, and I don't want to jump into the sort of comparison too much at this stage, but I had some sympathy with the fact that the terms of reference were very different.
Mm,
MIT were trying to, to show real ROI inside 12 months.
right.
Okay, interesting challenge. Um, what
Considering that most pilots take longer than that.
Well, exactly. So I think that you can look at the way in which they set up the terms of reference of the study they did.
Yeah.
The fact that 95% hadn't got beyond the pilot stage and that there was a certain amount of frustration amongst people
Mm,
it was a, well, no, Sherlock. I mean, it's, as you say, it takes more than 12 months. I
yes.
think there's a deeper thing coming in the way, and maybe we'll sort of save that for later, around scaling and how the hell do you scale these things.
Mm,
um, and the Wharton one, as you say, was more upbeat in one sense, but I thought it was looking at a somewhat different, in a really different lens. And they were talking about, productivity improvements and productivity gains.
right.
And I can actually see that there have been improvements. I was going to say when you say productivity gains, quite a lot of people will immediately jump to profit and loss. So what,
Mm,
did you save money? And
yeah.
some of the gains that have been made are making processes work better.
Right.
And the anecdotal evidence I've got, not from those reports, but from speaking to a number of different people, I've had two or three quite interesting conversations even in the last week,
Mm,
is that quite often what they're getting is, yes, it does some of our processes much better,
yeah.
but then it generates more work for us in other ways. So, for example, there was one in the schools sector, and it was an international school, where the challenge they had was, there was too much. The people doing the marking were having too much to do, so they were getting AI to help them. I mean, and let's not start on students using AI, but I mean,
Yeah.
that was a whole different story.
Yeah.
But they used AI to actually, they gave it they used things called gems,
Yeah.
create very, very specific sets of instructions
Right.
to the AI from a marking perspective.
Mm,
So he said, we got through that, and it made it much, much easier. So we were able, we were getting much better, we were giving much better feedback
mm,
based on the gems than we were doing when we were having to read it all ourselves. And, you were getting the feedback, and we would monitor the feedback, if you like, and then put it out. But he said it was then suddenly, because we were doing it that way,
mm,
we lost our personal contact with our students.
right.
We had to spend more time rebuilding that personal contact. It was really
Mm,
interesting. So yes, looked at it with blinkers on, absolutely it did things better. Could you get rid of a number of the markers? Well, the markers are the lecturers as well. So the answer
mm,
is no. But they
yeah.
reckoned it freed up their time to be more thoughtful, etc. But there was a sort of slight sting in the tail about the break in the sort of relationship, that you could keep handing these things to your students and you don't now understand your students.
Yeah.
Different issue. So yes, from a productivity point of view, I think that people are trying it and finding it helps in
Mm,
a number of areas. You look at the legal drafting of legal papers and all
yeah.
those sort of, yeah, you can see that, but it doesn't yet seem to be translating to the bottom line.
Yes. Yeah.
Doesn't yet.
And yeah, and maybe that's because we just don't know how to measure it yet as well.
Possibly,
It could be
yeah.
that. Could be that.
Or it hasn't been long enough, or it hasn't scaled far enough.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the, this is where we come back to, and there was a really, and I'll ping it to you. It was one of these senior guys at Salesforce. They did huge study.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they've been doing pilots and studies, etc. And the guy called Srinivas Talapragada, I'm going to murder his name, no doubt, who's the president and chief engineering and customer success officer at Salesforce, has done a really useful. But he uses and back to the influencer piece. He uses the why 95% of AI pilots fail as the sort of headline,
Yeah.
and what the other 5% do differently. So, as you and I know, you have to be careful to understand who's writing it and why they're writing it.
Oh yeah,
But he does
absolutely.
go through some really interesting challenges they faced in scaling agentic AI.
Yes,
And this may well lead into our enterprise architecture revisit at some point.
it may well do. It may well
So
do.
so from my perspective, both of those pieces were worthwhile reading, but you just had to, understand the nuances. And this is, as you say, where our love of the clickbait headline gets us into trouble.
Yes,
And I
indeed.
said us because I've probably been guilty of doing it myself. So I'm
Oh my God, I'm shocked. Right.
I'm
So I did I gave the reports their kind of due by putting them through ChatGPT. And then I asked ChatGPT to first of all kind of identify what they're both saying, and then asked it to actually identify what the differences were and why do their results differ or seemingly differ or perceived to be different. So for the MIT report, it came back with 5 points in terms of what the report is basically saying. So I'll just read out. There's a lot of detail on this. I'll include all of this in the description or in the comments if I run out of space, as I usually do in the description. But I'll just kind of read out some of the headlines. So it said adoption is high, but enterprise value creation is extremely rare. This is for the MIT. 80 to 90% of organizations are experiencing or experimenting with or using Gen AI, but 95% of them see no measurable P&L impact from enterprise-grade Gen AI systems. So that's I think the crux of what everybody's picked up on, and the shills and the IT mainstream media's kind of picked up on. They talk about other stuff. Says most Gen AI lives in the individual productivity layer, so the co-pilots and whatever type of thing. Copilot to production, is not really kind of huge take up, around only 5%. Real bottleneck is not the models or the data or the regulation, it's learning. That's actually getting to use them. I'd say probably pushback in terms of wanting to learn it in the first place as well. Transformation is structurally limited across industries. So only tech and media show real disruption. Again, yeah, I mean, that's kind of argumentative in terms of which industry picks up on it. And it said MIT's core thesis says Gen AI is real, useful, and everywhere, but almost entirely failing at enterprise scale value creation. So very much focused on, as you said, that sort of 12-month value creation, P&L, what's it doing to my P&L bottom line. Now, Wharton, this was the third year I think they've done this, I believe. But anyway, the highlights there was Gen AI usage is now mainstream with enterprises. 80% plus use it weekly, around 46% daily. Most enterprises report positive returns as they define them. So that's that 72 to 75%. So there's the 75% figure. Say they are seeing positive ROI through productivity, throughput, and efficiency gains. ROI discipline is increasing. More firms are formally tracking Gen AI ROI, which I suppose they really need to start doing. Value is strongest in repeatable office-centric workflows. So things like data analysis, summarization, writing, research, internal support. The real constraint is people, not technology. Actually, that matches with MIT because they were saying about training and enablement, and and as I added to it, pushback as well. So skills training, trust, change management, limit further gains. So the core thesis for them: Gen AI is delivering measurable, incremental value today, but scaling and human readiness will determine long-term impact. And I think that's actually fair and probably more accurate. Now, why is there a contradiction? So I asked it, is there a contradiction? And it said the short answer is no, which we probably knew anyway, because like I said, the influencers kind of picked up on that. 95% forgot the Wharton report completely until somebody surfaced it. Actually, I didn't even know it existed. So short answer, no. They're describing different layers of the same reality, but collapsing them into a single headline number creates the illusion of conflict. So the MIT 95% and the Wharton 75% figures do not measure the same thing. And then it went on to, I asked it for the, okay, so, but why are they appearing differently? Give me like a top 5 of why they're appearing differently. So it said, 1, they measure different definitions of ROI. 2, and it's got a lot more detail here, but I won't go through it just to kind of save us some time here. Actually, just on this, because I think this is the important bit. So the first one that it listed, it said they measure different definitions of ROI. The MIT ROI measures P&L impact, workflow level transformation, sustained production deployment. So that's the MIT ROI. The Wharton ROI says self-reported positive returns, mostly productivity, efficiency, and time savings. So really, I think it's the one is kind of looking at it, MIT is kind of looking at it formally, and it's kind of, trying to go and get the numbers from, finance or something. And then finance saying, actually, I don't think we're even measuring that. Or, yeah, from the little that we've got, there's been more, CapEx than actually anything positive on our P&L. And that's been kind of, I think, what they're getting from MIT. Whereas the Wharton one is talking to the people on the shop floor probably and saying, how's it going? Oh yeah, it's going really well. I'm using it for this and I'm using it for that. And, so the response is more positive. So it's identifying the point there as the single mismatch that explains around 60% of the confusion, being productivity doesn't equal to transformation, which doesn't equal to your P&L impact. That's right. What it's basically identified there. So that is the one point, that they measure different definitions of ROI. Now, like I said, it goes on to list 4 other ones: different units of analysis, systems versus people. The third one is survey optimism versus forensic skepticism, which is interesting. And again, I'll provide more details on all this later. Time horizon mismatch. So again, as you said, there's probably different timings for each of those. And then shadow AI versus official AI. That's kind of what they're also the angles that they're coming from as well. So that was the, why do you think it's different? That's why I asked, and that was the answer. Those top 5 things that it responded. But I think it's pretty much picked up on what everybody's subsequently, who's kind of done it with a bit more of a sober, perspective, that it's around AI, ROI, and it's around P&L. It's kind of how you're doing the measures of success in terms of, the P&L or the ROI. Okay, so that's interesting. Now, going beyond ChatGPT, I shared with you the summary document that a guy called Arun Sasidharan put out. And again, apologies if I'm not pronouncing that right. He's a Gen AI solutions engineering lead at TCS, Tata Consulting. And I actually connected with him and spoke to him, and he was very gracious about kind of the report. And we actually went back and forth a little bit in terms of the discussion, which was very good. And he's put out a really good, I think, measured report. So again, I actually asked ChatGPT to kind of give me its verdict on his report. And it said, this is a good, serious attempt. Overall, it mostly gets everything right, just with a few important caveats, I think, to kind of point out. But the bottom line verdict said, the document broadly aligns with the correct interpretations of the MIT versus Wharton split, and lands very closely to the synthesis from both those reports. The only thing that it pointed out was that that 95% sort of clash that we saw, the 95 fail, 75% win, I think was maybe kind of, Aaron kind of just lingered on that a little bit too much. He kind of focused on that a little bit too much and didn't give the kind of the wider scope for the report. But that's about it. I think he said, ChatGPT said he got everything right. He got the, identified the ROI as the defining sort of differentiator, correctly distinguished the forensic audits versus the executive pulse of the reports, the pilot to production, calling out the pilot to production as the kind of the main fault line, and various other information. Again, I'm not going to go through all of that. There's a ton of stuff in there. But yeah, otherwise, I think that was a really good report. And what I liked really about Aaron's sort of approach was that he just said, "Look, I've done the hard work for you. Just read the report." I mean, he gave the links to the original reports, and again, I really appreciate him sharing that in his document. But it was really interesting that he, I think he distilled it down very well. And again, like even ChatGPT, seemed to agree with the summary that he provided. So I think that was an excellent summary really from Aaron. So I appreciate Aaron doing that and the conversation that he and I had.
And I agree. I concur. I read it and thought, yeah. So I can't add anything extra to that because I think between ChatGPT and that, they've answered the question.
Nailed it, yeah. And I mean, I think my only thing here is, again, that we're seeing, and I shared this, I think, with you and David from Tech Industry Forum, that there's now a string of these kind of news items that break out on LinkedIn and I presume other places. I don't really do kind of X and Twitter and whatever, I only see it on LinkedIn. But I see enough on LinkedIn and that's enough to put me off and kind of, for the warning signs to start buzzing. We're seeing a lot of this kind of, over-egging, over-exaggeration from LinkedIn influencers and people who post quite regularly. I have our favorites in that space, who are just kind of taking a number like this, MIT, oh my God, 95%, of AI projects are failing, Gen AI projects are failing, and just running away with it. You and I saw this back in last year, and I think we talked about it in the October episode because we were talking about the AWS outage, which took us back to the CrowdStrike outage and that report that's associated it with public cloud and said that was public cloud's fault for the CrowdStrike outage. And we've seen it again over and over, various other ones, other reports and other posts that have come out since then that seem to all be kind of, this very sensationalist sort of almost the Sun newspaper type headline, sort of approach. And I think that's for me, I mean, the numbers, you can kind of argue about it and whatever, and, you can get your kicks out of that. But for me, the concern is really around this, influencer circles putting out these types of things as if they're gospel. That's kind of the be all. That 95% is the be all and end all. That's it. That's what I'm convinced by. And you and I said this again in the October episode when you said this kind of reporting is really dangerous. Not everybody's going to fall for it, but people who are kind of just flicking through and reading might be influenced. And especially if, like I said, if you have lots of similar type of approaches for these reports and people putting out, exaggerating the numbers or focusing only on one particular figure from a report or a survey or something like that. I think I'm beginning to agree with you that is not just an error or something that people are, we need to take with a pinch of salt, but we really need to think about what we're reading. This information, is it true? And it makes me more skeptical, really, about the information that I read on platforms like LinkedIn.
Yeah, we've got, I think you made the point, probably in an email or a WhatsApp exchange between us, that the deluge of information, a deluge of data, is actually, dulling our brains a little bit in terms of thinking around it. I've always worked on the principle that, understand who's written it, why they've written it, what their angle is, and double check your sources, but when there's that much kicking around and everybody wants to do things at high speed, the danger is they shortcut and take a figure that fits their particular story and run with it. So it is dangerous, but we as consumers of the information, never mind being people who provide it as well, need to get savvier at actually comparing and contrasting and saying, don't doom scroll through the lot thinking, oh my God, just go away and think about it. But hey, time is of the essence, as they say these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only thing that's kind of, preventing us from really sitting down and looking at, this information, is the time. I think it's just that we do not have the time, and again, even I recall, I think even with the CrowdStrike outage, I mean, the immediate finger was being pointed at Microsoft and initially, because obviously it was Windows, so everybody was saying, oh, it's Microsoft's fault, it's the Windows fault. Well, okay, so it actually turned out to be CrowdStrike's problem, not Microsoft's, and Microsoft's hands were tied because as I found later on, and I shared with you again and David, I think recently, and this is if you go back to, I think the July or the August episode of Class Data Play from last year, I did an addendum to the unfiltered episodes. So I actually didn't have it at the time when we recorded those episodes, but I did it, I think, in the addendum when I released that particular segment on CrowdStrike just on its own as an unfiltered episode. I'd learned from Windows Weekly, which is a Y-weekly or weekly, I think, weekly, as the name implies. It's a weekly kind of discussion sort of session like you and I have. They do it on a weekly basis. And one of the guys is a really good journalist, picked up on this Wall Street Journal thing, I think, that had been kind of just written in a obscure paragraph towards the end of this report, saying that actually Microsoft's hands were tied in that arena, in that problem, because the European Commission had deemed that if they don't allow the likes of CrowdStrike and various other ones access to the Windows kernel, it would be perceived as being monopolistic. So they had to allow these players, and actually it wasn't even CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike just took advantage of it. It was the McAfees and the semantics of the world back in, I think, 2009 or whenever it was, when all that sort of investigation and stuff was happening. Anyway, point being is that we need to kind of be a little bit more aware of the information that we're digesting, not take everything as gospel, do our own investigation, as Aaron, I think, has done a really good job of doing here. And I think that's really prudent in terms of kind of, this day and age. And we've got really good tools. We've got ChatGPT and stuff like that we can throw these reports into and see if they make sense, and ask it to go and correlate and bring us some further proof, maybe that's outside of that influence and that realm that we're looking at. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Okay, all right, so let's move on to our third topic. So our third topic is IT is a service, and I put in square brackets to the business just to clarify that. So obviously, I mean, I think when I looked at the post on this, it was fairly obvious. Again, it's kind of stating the obvious in terms of the IT as a service, but I don't know what your take is, Paul. Maybe not everybody understands that who actually works in IT departments.
Well, I mean, there was a little chart that came with that, wasn't there? There was a chart in there, and that in itself actually felt like IT talking to itself rather than to the business. And I think the point of the way you phrased it and the way I'm certainly thinking about services these days, I mean, is that it is about the business outcome, the intent of the business. I'm actually, quite getting, to the point where I'm trying to push this idea of intent-based systems, what's the intent of what they're trying to do. So, and it did strike me that it was still very much internally focused on IT service amongst itself. And it was almost like, well, that's what the IT ops people have been trying to do for years, or the vendors have been trying to do for years.
Yeah.
And got nowhere near. And as I say, the disappointing thing for me, and one of the reasons I hadn't followed up on things like IBM's AI ops or anybody else's AI ops for a couple of years, was I could not see them making that leap up to, what do you do for the business? And therefore, what from an outcomes basis, how are you helping improve the outcomes of the business? And today, and the problem with the term service is difficult too, because to an IT person, services is to do with microservices and cloud development and all the microservices. Or to a consultant, it's the service that the consultant is providing, and you're trying to get people. And IBM, bless them, are probably better than most at trying to make that link between the business, intent, the business objective, and the service that is supporting it, or the services that are supporting it. It's almost like there's two languages. There's a language of business and there's a language of technology, and nobody's done the translation yet. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Now, I know, when you and I were talking about it, there was some suggestion, maybe probably a little bit on your part, I think, was that sometimes IT are willful in ignoring the business, the business drivers. But ultimately, it's the business that pays their wages, and you think,
yes,
careful.
Yeah.
So when you put that up as a topic, I thought, well, yeah, I think you're right. We're just not as far forward as I thought we would be. And say AI ops. I mean, AI ops vendors were talking about both predictive analytics and the ability to link, and sort of prioritize to the most important business applications.
Right. Yeah.
It ain't happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So the post was from a guy called Chris Jones, who's a CTO and co-founder. I don't know of what, but I didn't really look that up. But again, we'll find all the details in the description of the video. But he said, so his post is quite long, but he said the service is not collections of technology. If that is your organization's view, you're in trouble. It says we've spent years building increasingly sophisticated capabilities across our IT organizations, better platforms, smarter automation, autonomous teams empowered to move fast. And how did that happen? And the answer, he says, I think lies in what we optimized for. So then he goes on to talk about it. As you said, there is a chart on there, which is quite interesting. So it's got the service in the middle. Again, we'll show you this on the screen, guys, somewhere. And he lists, strategy as one pillar or one area. Build is another one. IT ops is a fourth, and then a third, and the ITSM being the fourth. So in strategy, he says plan and invest. In build, he says develop and deploy. In IT ops, monitor and respond, and ITSM says support and enable. I mean, I'm largely okay with that. On build, I was looking for certain things. So he says things like CI/CD pipelines. Okay, good. That's kind of latest stuff. And then he's got connections from those four sort of corners into the service in terms of where they come in when they interact with the service, as he calls it. the organizing unit, and that has things like taxonomy, it has ownership, criticality, dependencies, and SLAs as part of it, and all those point to those four sort of core areas, or those peripheral areas, I should say, the corner areas of the chart. So I think I'm in agreement with that. I just think the thread that I really picked up on was this sort of, IT sometimes just kind of thinks it's doing tech and IT just for the sake of tech and IT. And really, as you just said, we need to be kind of aware, or IT teams need to be aware, that they're doing it because they need to enable the business. The business needs to do something, and everything these days requires technology to do it. So IT needs to enable the business. I'm kind of just a little bit, sort of sick and tired of, people being prima donnas when it comes to, sort of doing certain things, or disagreeing with a certain move, or being kind of, the stones that won't, it cannot be moved. Basically, you have to kind of go around them. The water has to kind of flow around them, and I think that is really both unprofessional, but also, for me, you're kind of really, it's a detriment to your own career as well, and you're kind of, moving your career forward. And I don't like that kind of attitude. I prefer that people can say, okay, I was skeptical, I had a look at it, I actually like it, it's good, I'll go with it. Or, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I will conform because that is what we need to do, although I still don't agree with that. I mean, I still have that beef with platform engineering. I'm not necessarily a fan of platform engineering, but I've gone out and created a whole 6-part series on platform engineering, so I can, educate myself and learn the opposite points about, about sort of the views on platform engineering, and the whys and hows of platform engineering, and so on. By the way, if you want to check that out, it's called Code to Culture, so check that out on my channel. I've got 3 episodes, and then Same Safdar's Cloud Native FM channel is doing the other 3. If you're watching this much later, there's probably a playlist somewhere on both our channels, so check out the Code to Culture series. But point being is that, I just want to kind of see IT really take that responsibility seriously and say, yes, we're here to enable, we're here to innovate, we're here to make the business successful, and we'll do whatever it takes within reason, because people outside IT don't know IT, so we can steer the business in the right direction, but be an innovator to the business, not something that kind of prevents the business from doing something because we don't like that technology.
Yeah, and I'm sort of split on both sides on this particular thing I'm going to mention, which is this whole issue of shadow IT, whether that's for cloud or AI or whatever. Is that certainly when they were initially talking about cloud in the shadow IT world, and it was as much to do with IT departments not wanting to get rid of their legacy stuff, not understanding what was coming. But I also think there is an element of, the shadow IT world, whether that's AI or cloud, being down to management not understanding, and is it their problem they don't understand, and frustration from IT that management hasn't understood, given them the money or the go ahead to go and do these things. But I do then, and so I've got a level of sympathy with IT when that sort of thing happens. But I think the onus is on them to make themselves relevant and understood by the business, rather than the business saying, "Oh yes, of course you're relevant." When the business actually doesn't understand all the terminology, it's the duty of IT to get that straight.
100% agree with that, and like I said, the whole point is that you maintain and you keep yourself relevant. And you keep yourself relevant to the business by being proactive, not reactive to the business. I don't want marketing and finance or whatever screaming and banging, on my door because the systems that they have is crap and they're demanding these other things. And I'm kind of going, oh, what's wrong with VMware? And and we just stay with virtualization. It's like, no, we have to move on with the times. You have to be innovative and go to the business, say, we need to do this. We need to do this Gen AI thing because we feel, that there's a really good opportunity. There's, technically we have the capability. We need to find, what the business can get out of that. What is the advantage for the business? So I think that needs to be a proactive, innovative kind of thinking. All CIOs, CTOs need to have that sort of approach, going forward.
They obviously they almost want something sort of akin to a long range sensor,
a radar.
A radar, yes, about
Sweeping.
what's coming down the track,
Yeah.
and not necessarily technology, although that you have to marry the two together, but what are the pressures on the business? What's coming? Even consumer sentiment, all those sort of things. Is how should I be repositioning this to help my company work, knowing what capabilities we've got and what capabilities come.
So not tech for tech's sake, like I said, but tech as in kind of, this is a big paradigm shift. We need to look at it, and then let's see how this would fit into the business, as well as the business coming to you saying, "Hey, can we do this thing?"
Yeah,
right? So it's a kind of a two-way thing. But I think the tech and IT stuff, only the tech and IT people understand. So you have to find a way to make that relevant and convey that somehow to the business.
Yeah, and I think we've discovered over the years, going right back into the sort of history of computing, it is more likely to be the CIO or somebody like that who's got the ability to make the translation rather than the out and out business people, the finance director, the HR director, the operations director. Have got so many things on their plate that they, it's almost like, oh, don't bother me with that one now type approach. So I think it's an opportunity for senior IT people in organizations to take a different role. This is not new. People have been saying this for a long time, but we're still struggling to get there, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just, I agree, I think, with the sentiment. The chart, I think to a large degree makes sense. And IT teams just kind of need to be, they can't really sort of kind of just slump back in their seats. They need to stay on their toes and keep up to date with the latest stuff and be proactive.
My big argument with that chart is simply that it's too inward looking. It's still not, and you become divorced from reality or divorced from the wider environment around you if you keep looking inwards. I always say to people, it doesn't matter what part of the business they're working in, part of your brain needs to be looking out all the time.
Agreed. So I think that's a good way to close out the year. So IT teams, Gen AI is coming for you next year, so look out for it, definitely. All right, so Paul, we're there. Thank you as always. I appreciate all your input and insights. It's been a great year, I think, for Cloud State of Play. We've really enjoyed. Oh, I certainly have enjoyed all the topics. The topics we've gone through. Would you believe it's 36 topics that we've covered? Yeah, so 3 times 12.
And how many years have we been running now? 3 years we've been running?
3.5. So next July we'll be celebrating 4 years. So there you go. Only 6 or so episodes to go.
I probably had dark hair in the first episode.
Probably did. I should put the 2 and 2 together and put that as the intro for this video. Even if it's not dark, I'll darken it with a little bit of effect, and then we'll make it a full job. Wow, yeah. I think that's a huge number to crunch through. So that's fantastic. 36 episodes, 36 topics, and 12 episodes. Really great. Now that we'll be back for the January projections, not predictions, but projections. And we'll remind our dear audience of that again in the January episode. But yeah, thanks also to you guys, our dear audience. Really appreciate you spending this time with us. We hope that you've really enjoyed this particular episode. As always, please feel free to comment and share the episode. Also give us some details about any suggestions you may have for topics for 2026. please drop those in the comments. That would be really cool. And we will see you in the new year in more episodes of Cloud State to Play. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.